Hello everybody, my name is ProfRich. This is where we learn real, natural English. Today, we will learn how to use the past perfect continuous. We will see real conversational examples. So, if that's what you want to see, then make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe. Let's get on with the class. Let's start with a little which is correct question. So, which is correct? Have a look at those examples and you tell me which of those examples is correct. Number 1, I'd been writing a story and it was almost finished. Number 2, I'd written a story and it was almost finished. Number 3, I was writing a story and it was almost finished. So which of those is correct? 1, 2, or 3? And hello to everybody there in the chat. Sleepwalker says it's the first one. I'll give you about 30 seconds to have a little think about that before I give you the answer. Which is correct? Most people say 1. So, in fact, 1 is correct. 2 is not correct. And 3 is correct. So 1 and 3 are correct. What about number 2? Well, with I'd written a story, that does sound like you finished the action because this verb is an action verb, not a state verb. And because it's an action verb, when we use it with the past perfect simple, it sounds like it's finished. So this makes no sense. We're going to talk more about that later in the class. Let's try another one of these. So, which is correct? Number 1, I'd been sleeping all day when I woke up. Number 2, I'd slept all day when I woke up. And number 3, I was sleeping all day when I woke up. So, answers in the chat. What do you think about that? Oops. What do you think about that? Which of those do you think is correct? Answers in the chat. And I'll give you about another 30 seconds for that. There is also a poll in the chat. The poll asks about your attitude with the past perfect continuous. What do you think about the past perfect continuous? Make sure that you join us live for these live English classes or watch the class afterwards and comment down below the video to let me know what was helpful for you and what wasn't helpful. You have about another 10 seconds. All right, so number 1 is correct. And with number 1, the action might be interrupted or it might finish. So it might be interrupted or it might finish. For number 2, the action, I'd slept all day, is finished. It's like I completed sleeping all day. And for number 3, this one actually sounds a bit weird. And the reason it sounds a bit weird is you say, I was sleeping all day as a background piece of information, but then it seems like we interrupt that action with I woke up. Yet you said you were sleeping all day. So actually this number 3 doesn't really sound right. You have to be careful when you're using the past continuous with durations, because sometimes you can have this problem. We're going to have a bit of a look at that in today's class. So, true or false? You remember we did this also with the past perfect simple. We're going to do a true or false. Oh, hello. My subscribe for more thing is still going. Yeah, you should, by the way, subscribe for more. So, true or false, past perfect continuous. 1, 2, or 3? What do you think about that? Pallavi says, subject plus had been plus ing. Is it correct, teacher? Yes, that's right. Just take object off that, Pallavi, because you don't necessarily need an object. It depends on the verb. In English, we almost always need a subject, but we often don't need an object. The object depends on what you're trying to say. Sometimes we don't need an object. And I'm going to close the poll from the start of class now. So it seems that most people say it's fun. Some people say it's hard. 11% say it's weird, and 5% say it's useless. You have about 30 seconds left to choose the correct answers here, true or false, for the past perfect continuous. What do you think? Number 1 can be for a short time, like under 5 seconds, like 2 seconds. Number 2, it can end before the main events in the past. It can end before the main events in the past. And number 3, it can continue after the main events in the past. So Sleepwalker says they are all true. Anawat says they are all true. Zoya says true, true, false. Interesting. Interesting. All right, the answers are, in fact, they are all true. So, well done, Sleepwalker. And well done to Anawat. And well done to Manuel Gordillo. They are all true. So let's take a look then at the grammar here. All right. Traditional grammar of the past perfect continuous. So past perfect continuous is for an action which starts before the main events in the past. That is basically the same as past perfect simple. However, remember, past perfect simple is for actions or states that begin before main events in the past. Past perfect continuous, we cannot use for states. Like, I had been having hair when I was younger. No, I had hair at that time. Not, I had been having a blue Fiesta. No, I had a blue Fiesta. Yes. So we can use it only for actions, not states. And it may finish before the main events, stop because of the main events, and we call this an interruption. Like, I had been sleeping when my alarm went off. Then C, it can continue after the main events. So the past perfect continuous is very, flexible depending on the situation. So you can see there, the top one, finish before the events. Then B, it can stop because of the main events. Or C, it continues after the main events. An example of C, because I think C is the one that people think, really? Past perfect continuous could continue after? Yeah, think about this. We had been living in Spain for some years before we really learnt the language. We had been living in Spain for some years before we really learnt the language. I'll type that in the chat. We'd been living in Spain for some years before we really learnt the language. So in this circumstance, it is possible that I continue living in Spain after that. We'd been living in Spain for some years before we really learnt the language. Living in Spain does not stop when we really learnt the language. It carries on. So that is situation C, which I think could be a little difficult sometimes. So, question is, what's the difference? Why do we use the past perfect continuous? Why not just use past perfect simple? Why not use past continuous? Let's have a look at that. So here are some sentences. We have, I was cooking breakfast when my friend arrived. I'd cooked breakfast when my friend arrived. I'd been cooking breakfast when my friend arrived. Can you explain in the chat what the difference is with those three sentences? And if you're watching this video later, then you can type your answer in the comments or write it down on a notepad. Writing down your answer really helps. Instead of just doing it in your head, just make a note on your notepad. And if you don't have a notepad for your English learning, why not? And you have about 30 seconds for that. You will notice some new features of the stream. If you use emojis in chat, they will bounce around the screen. And Anonymous says, bye everyone, take care, busy days. So I'm guessing that that's Pavia? Daisy? Pavia, I guess. What's the difference? Pallavi asked an interesting question, which is not necessarily about this, but it's a good question. She says, which tense in English grammar is more important to know? The most important tense in English grammar is the present simple. We use the present simple more than anything else. It's the most common, and actually it has the most utility, means we can use it for many different things. So let's take a look at this. What are the differences? Number one, the action is ongoing when my friend arrived. So the action is ongoing. Remember that you can have an interrupted action with past continuous and past simple, but it does depend on the context. In this case, it's unlikely that the action is interrupted, but if I give more context, then we could use it like that. Like, I was cooking breakfast when my friend arrived. I got distracted and I forgot all about my breakfast. So that is possible. Then number two, I'd cooked breakfast when my friend arrived. The action was completed before the main events. So with two, we know that it is completed. And number three, we have an ambiguity. The action, I'd been cooking breakfast when my friend arrived. The action may be finished or may continue when my friend arrived. Let's write it like that. Continue after the main events. Now, you might say, well, why use number three? Because we emphasize the duration of the action or the ongoingness. So we emphasize the duration or the ongoingness of the action. So in other words, we are either emphasizing that the action continues or we're emphasizing that the action had some duration. Whereas with number one, we can emphasize the duration, but we may also just emphasize or just mention it as a background event, not necessarily emphasizing the duration. So you can see there is some overlap here. And that is probably one of the reasons why the past perfect continuous is one of the least used tenses in English. So, I'm going to say some phrases, and I'd like you to listen to those phrases and type what you hear in the chat. So listen to the phrases and type what you hear in the chat. And I will myself type that in the chat. Not least of all because I can do this. Look, new feature, new feature. All right, here you go. Are you ready, folks? Are you ready to type these? Type the words you hear. Type the words you hear. Number one. Had you been thinking about it for long? Had you been thinking about it for long? Had you been thinking about it for long? Number two. I'd been preparing for months. I'd been preparing for months. I'd been preparing for months. Remember to smash that like button and hit subscribe. We have 2 more. Number 3. It'd been raining all morning. It had been raining all morning. It had been raining all morning. And finally, number 4. How long had you been speaking with him? With him. How long had you been speaking with him? How long had you been speaking with him? All right, let's have a look at some answers. You can see the answers on the screen there. And the next question is, when could you use these sentences? When could you use these sentences? So give examples. When could you use these sentences? And I mean, in what situation? So what situation? In what situation could you use these sentences? Number 1. Oh, number 1 has changed. Sorry. Ta-da! This is the trade-off of a live class versus pre-recorded. So, number 1 says, had you been thinking about it for long? Had you been thinking about it for long? Can you give a situation? Can you give a situation when we could use that? Had you been thinking about it for long? That's a good one, Zoya. Could we have a bit more context with that? Zoya says decision. Yes, Pallavi, we are asking a question, but what's the situation? Can you give a specific situation? After hearing news. That could be interesting, actually, Vladimir. But I think I need a bit more. When someone told you their idea. Yes. That's a good one. Yeah, it's like, I had an idea about the project. It's this, this, and this. Oh, that's amazing. Had you been thinking about it for long? Yes, that's great, Takeshi. When someone told you their idea. Brilliant. Oh, that's a good one, Zoya. That's a good one. Actually, I think better than that, Zoya, is to say, I've decided. Like, I've decided to change my job. And then it's like, oh, wow, you decided to change your job. All right, go for it. Had you been thinking about it for long? Or was it a quick decision? That's great. Okay, let's talk about number 2. I've been preparing for months. What could we say there for number 2? What's the situation? I've been thinking about it for months. Before buying something really expensive. Yeah. Like, I finally bought my new house. Or I finally bought my Ferrari last week. I finally bought my Ferrari last week. I've been preparing for months. Preparing to buy my Ferrari. Okay. When you're told something you had succeeded, yes, that's it, isn't it? It's, I passed the test. I'm so happy. I've been preparing for months. That's perfect. I got my 8.0 IELTS. I'm so happy. I've been preparing for months. Brilliant. All right, what about number 3? It had been, notice I'm contracting. It had been, you don't have to contract. It had been raining all morning. It had been raining all morning. At a golf course. I think you'd need to say something kind of like, we had an awful time at the golf course. The ground was horribly wet. We had an awful time at the golf course. The ground was horribly wet. It had been raining all morning. So, Pallavi, I just want you to think, what things would someone say before you say the target phrase? So for number 3, we had an awful time at the golf course. The ground was horribly wet. It had been raining all morning. Do you see? Perhaps adding an exclamation mark after number 3. Yes, Reem. I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. All right, and number 4. How long had you been speaking with him? How long had you been speaking with him? What do you think for number 4? How long had you been speaking with him? And if you are new here, then do remember to smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this is the place to learn real, natural English. I'm going to give you an example for number 4. I think number 4 is quite difficult. We met online last year and then decided to get married. Oh, wow. How long had you been speaking with him? How long had you been speaking with him? Or how long had you been meeting up? All right. When you find out your daughter is seeing someone, actually, Takeshi, you need a bit more than that. You need to say, when you find out your daughter has done something with someone, like got engaged or had a date or something else, then maybe how long had you been speaking with him before you got engaged or went on a date or whatever. Nadia says, Dear Rich, what's the difference between speaking and talking here in context? Speaking and talking, basically the same, Nadia. There's not really a great deal of difference there. Not much that we need to worry about anyway. All right, everybody, well done. We have smashed through it today. So, as a reflection, what did we do today? Well, we checked the past perfect continuous use, we learned the past perfect continuous grammar, and we practiced using the past perfect continuous. The only thing really to add about the past perfect continuous is that most of the time, the past perfect continuous is a question of choice, as in you can choose to use it to emphasize certain things. You don't have to use it. And that's probably why a lot of the time, people choose not to use the past perfect continuous. But I like it. I think it sounds good. There is one circumstance when you do need to use it, and that's when you have an action with a duration and the action is interrupted. In that case, you must use, the action is finished, in which case you must use the past perfect continuous. And we had an example of that from the start of class that was, I'd been sleeping all day when I woke up. I'd been sleeping all day when I woke up. And that tells us that all day you'd been sleeping, it was finished, and you woke up. We can't really use the past continuous here. It sounds a bit weird because it's like you have I was sleeping all day as a continuous action, but also it's interrupted. But that's not possible. How can you sleep all day, but also it's interrupted? You see? It's a little bit strange. So we need to use past perfect continuous. In all the other situations, it's a choice and it's about emphasis and personal preference. So do you want to emphasize the duration of an action? Then past perfect continuous can do that. All right, fantastic. So now we can move on to question time, and I can take any questions that you have about English. If you have any questions, then please do ask those questions now in the chat. And you can, of course, download the notes from today, as always. What questions have we got today, folks? I have the new system, which allows me to highlight your comments, which I am super happy about. Did a bit of work on my stream settings. Thank you, Anawat. That's a spicy one. How do we use the perfect continuous infinitive? Have been plus ing. That's the form. So Anawat is talking about this. Have plus been plus ing. And he wants to know how we use that, the perfect continuous infinitive. So we know that a common situation to use any kind of perfect infinitive is, of course, after modal verbs. So what modal verbs could we use this with? Certainly would have been. And as we know, would have been goes very well in third conditional. So we could come up with a lovely third conditional example, can't we? Where we say, if I'd had to work as a toilet cleaner, that would have been challenging. I'm not convinced by my own use here. No, let's try something else. Let me have a think. Let's do something else here. If I had won the lottery last year, I would have been spending all my money. All year. Or, let's say, this year. If I'd won the lottery last year, I would have been spending all my money this year. That's pretty good, isn't it? So, would have been is one option. There's some other options we could use. Like, we could use speculation and deduction. So, could, may, might, must, have been plus ing. Like, where's Rob? He should be at work today. Or even, he should have been at work this morning. And the other person responds, oh, he must have been sleeping. You know what he's like. I'm trying to think if there's a time when we would use the perfect continuous infinitive without modals. Let me think. You can. It's quite unusual. There's a few things you could say. Like, you can use it with other verbs. I wanted to I wanted to have been like something like this. I wanted to have been getting started by now. It's very advanced and even a little bit unusual, but it is possible. So something like that. I wanted to have been getting started by now. Yeah, very kind of colloquial how it's coming out. Let's see what Anawat says. We're glad to have been coming here. Yeah, that's great. It's especially great if you add a time period. We're glad to have been coming here for all these years, or we're thankful to have been coming here all these years. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well done, Anawat. Good example. All right, let's see what else we have. Takeshi says, chicken is countable, but why isn't fried chicken? There's 2 chickens. Yeah. There's 2 chickens, Takeshi. In English and in other languages, words often have a countable and uncountable form. Examples are chicken, as you identified. Coffee is a good one. Water, also. So we can use it countable and uncountable. You can, for example, you can have a pet chicken or have 3 chickens. You can cook a chicken, but you can also cook chicken, right? So you can cook a chicken, like a whole chicken, like I'm cooking a chicken, or I'm cooking 2 chickens. Oh, we need 3 chickens because there's lots of people, right? But also you could cook chicken. Oh, I'm putting chicken in the curry, just chicken. So it can be countable or uncountable. Same with coffee. Like, I love coffee, or I love having a coffee, having a coffee. I'm drinking coffee, or I'm drinking a coffee. So we can use coffee, countable or uncountable. We can use chicken, countable or uncountable. There is a slight difference in the meaning, right? So when I say coffee, uncountable, that means like coffee beans. I don't know if we have a... Yeah, I don't have a thing for that, unfortunately. Let's just put the plant. Yeah, there we go. So we got coffee, which would be coffee beans, uncountable, or the material of coffee, versus a cup of coffee, which is countable coffee. 1 coffee, 2 coffee. How many coffees did you have? All right. Pallavi says, I have no questions other than I wrote one. Did you write? Where is your question, Pallavi? When did you write one? Oh, what is argumentative writing? Yes. Argumentative writing. Let me just get this right because I get it mixed up with discursive. So normally we talk about an argumentative essay versus a discursive essay. So argumentative essay, we'll call that 1 and 2. Argumentative essay number 1, you take one side, argue for that side. argue against, or predict, let's say, predict counter arguments of the other side and defend against them, conclude that your side is correct, and summarize. So that is the way it works with an argumentative essay. Then with a discursive essay, you examine a, let's say, dichotomy. So examine a dichotomy, which is when there's this or that. Spend time discussing the merits of both sides. Conclude which side you think is more correct. So that's a discursive essay. Now, when I was at university, the popular kind of essay was discursive. However, it does seem that these days, the more popular type of essay is argumentative. So there's been a little change there. Sheed is a contraction of would, right? It could be both, Pallavi. Could be she would or she had. So both are possible. Gets even more complicated when we have that, or not even that, but if we say like riches, right? Because that could be rich has, rich is, or even of rich, like Rich's pen or Rich's car. So contractions can be ambiguous. However, most of the time, oh, fancy language, most of the time, the context will tell you. As with everything, the context will tell you. So it all depends on the context, Pallavi. The context is the important thing. Excuse me, Takeshi? Learned can be pronounced two ways. Learned and learned. Oh, yes, yes. But is it weird to say, I have learned? Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes, yes. Well done. Yeah, so learned is an adjective. So when you say that learned, that's an adjective. That one. It's quite rare as well. We don't often use that. But it's an only as an adjective. Or a learned scholar, as you say. So the common and normally correct pronunciation is learned. Learned. Learned, not learned. Strange pronunciation only for the adjective. Dan says, Rich, is this sentence grammatically correct? Your transaction is declined due to your account is locked. No, not really. Not really, Dan. Has been declined is the normal way to say that. So your transaction has been declined due to your account being locked. Or your transaction has been declined due to... Yeah, I can't see another way to see this. Your transaction is declined due to your account being locked. Yeah, that's it. Due to the fact that your account's locked. Appears to be locked. Or is locked. Wonderful. What do you think about the... What do you think about the on-screen chat highlights? That's that bar there. What do you think about it? It took me like 3 hours to make that happen. Yeah, argumentative essays seem to be the popular essays to choose now. How do we know that? It's the context, Pallavi, like I said. Context, so just what happens around it. Rich, can we have a lesson on reported speech one day? Yeah, sure. Of course we can. Of course we can, Sleepwalker. There's a few people I owe a lesson to because they have bought me a coffee. By the way, if you want to buy me a coffee, the link is down below the video to buy me a coffee. There's a few people who've bought me coffees in the past, like, for example, Sonia Bottarini. So if there's something that you want to learn, let me know, and I will prepare a lesson for that in the future. The polls really helped me to know what works, Manuel. If you remember, I tried... Actually, you were on holiday, but I tried using music throughout the whole stream one time, and then I did the poll, and like 70% said no music. So yeah, the polls actually are really helpful. Really helpful. Oh, there's an interesting one. Is it possible to use past perfect continuous in passive form? No, I don't think so. That would sound really weird. That would sound really weird. I'd been being. I'd been being. I think it just, I can't imagine why anyone would use that. Let me just do a bit of research here. Yeah, it always sounds weird. Right? It always sounds weird. Like, people have been being fine. No, had been, right? It sounds weird with present perfect continuous as well. Strictly speaking, the grammar is sound. So the grammar there is sound, but it's weird and very unusual. And when I say it's very unusual, I mean it's a very unusual. Very unusual. I think if someone uses this, then probably they should have used something else instead. right? I didn't get the difference between I'd been sleeping when I woke up and I'd slept. I'd been sleeping when I woke up. I'd slept. Oh, because the point, Zoya, is it had all day. So it was I'd been sleeping all day when I woke up. And I'd been sleeping, or I'd slept all day when I woke up. Let me think a minute. I've been sleeping for my lunch break when I woke up. I've been sleeping for my lunch break when I've been sleeping all day when I woke up. I'd slept all day when I woke up. Oh, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. It's tough. Let's have a bit more of a think about this. You are right that it seems like there's little difference here. Although there is a sense of this being interrupted, it seems unlikely that it was actually interrupted. We'd been living there when we learnt Spanish. We'd lived there for 7 years when we learnt Spanish, when we left. Been living there for 6 years when we went on holiday. No. Okay, if we change it a little bit and we say, I'd been cooking, so the house smelt bad. And we say, I'd cooked, and I've been cooking, what smells bad? Something that smells bad? I've been cooking curry, so the house smelt bad. I'd cooked curry, so the house smelt bad. So there is definitely a sense with the second one that it can be finished, but it doesn't have to be. I'd been cooking curry, so the house smelt bad. My friend arrived and complained about it. I told him to deal with it and give me a hand to finish the curry. Whereas if I put this here, this makes no sense. How can I finish the curry? The curry is finished. So there is definitely a difference, but it is contextual and subtle. It's about emphasis rather than a 0 and 1. But thank you for identifying that, because you are right that with that example, I've been sleeping all day when I woke up. I'd slept all day when I woke up. I've been sleeping all day when I woke up. I'd slept all day when I woke up. You know what? There's a sense here that it's like all the day and the day is finished. Whereas here, there's a sense of like all the day up to that point. It's a subtle difference, but like a slight difference of, yes, all day up to that point versus all day and the day is finished. But as I say, it's a subtle difference and there's a lot of overlap. So you could actually use both of them for either meaning. Such is the case with the past perfect continuous. As you've said, it's very much like about emphasis. Zoya got me a coffee. Was that the £8 one, Zoya? Thank you very much for that. I should check this. Let's just check who's bought me coffees that I haven't mentioned. Because I do want to shout it out, definitely. I might shout it out more than once because I forget, but that's fine. Yes, Zoya was last week. Thank you, Zoya. If you have any requests, let me know. Was your request about the reported speech? No, that's Sleepwalker. Have you bought me a coffee, Sleepwalker? And there were a few the week before, but I seem to remember that I did shout those out. And I don't want to read people's email addresses, so I'm not going to say that. But those people from last week, I think I did say thank you for that. I can't from my country. Oh, that sucks. I'm surprised though. With Stripe, you can normally. No? Unless you mean Russia, in which case, maybe not. The first one might be in hospital. They woke up and got a sedative drug to sleep again. No, not sure about that. Oh, okay, Sleepwalker. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because of that situation and the actions which have been taken, which affect everybody. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. It's been my pleasure. My name has been ProfRich. Make sure that you smash that like button and hit subscribe if you want more content like this. Remember, there will be no stream on Saturday. I will be away this Saturday. So no stream this Saturday. But thank you for joining me today. And I'll see you potentially next week. Thank you very much. Catch you later. Bye-bye now. Have a lovely, lovely day.